All right, it's time to look into what's trending in employment law. Lawyer, you're on the clock.
All right. So the big thing going on in the last couple of days here is the Department of Labor has issued its final rule on independent contractors, and that's what we're really going to focus on during Lawyer on the Clock today. And I want to make it very clear that businesses are going to struggle to classify workers as independent contractors under this new Department of Labor rule. Everybody should mark their calendars for March 11, 2024. The Biden administration officially rescinded a rule that made it easier to classify workers as independent contractors under federal wage and hour rules. And in its place, businesses are going to have to look to an outdated, what I would consider to be an outdated standard that's going to likely result in more workers being classified as employees versus independent contractors. So let's take a little quick look back. The prior rule applied the traditional, what we know is the economic realities test, by weighing 5 factors and determining whether the worker is in business for themselves and thus a contractor, or economically dependent on the hiring entity and therefore an employee. Those 5 factors were the nature and degree of the individual's control over the work, the individual's opportunity for profit or loss, the amount of skill required for the work, the degree of permanence of the working relationship, and then finally, whether the work is part of an integrated unit of production. Those were the factors under the old rule. That rule is about to be scrapped, and it's primarily now going to focus on the prior rule primarily focused on 2 core factors, and that was really the extent of control exercised over key aspects of the work, and then the opportunity for profit or loss. Now there's going to be a new 6-factor test that's going to be put into place. And those factors do not have a predetermined weight and are considered in view of the economic reality of the whole activity. And this is known as the totality of the circumstances analysis. So these 6 factors are the worker's opportunity for profit or loss, depending on managerial skill, the relative amount of investment made by the worker in comparison to investments made by the potential employer, the permanency of the worker's relationship with the potential employer, the nature and degree of the potential employer's control, the extent to which the work performed is an integral part of the potential employer's business. That's a very important one under this test. And then whether the worker uses specialized skills indicative of business-like initiative. And in addition, Phil, the new rule
that last one is interesting to me as well. Especially, so if I think of like an Uber driver, someone who's driving, there's no special skill in being an Uber driver, assuming that most people over the age of 16 in America do drive.
Yeah, so I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there, Phil, with those last couple of factors there. And that is, again, whether the worker uses specialized skills indicative of business-like initiative. This rule is definitely targeted at the gig economy. And then that other rule that I focused on, the extent to which the work performed is an integral part of the potential employer's business. Well, Uber and Lyft are transportation companies. Right. And the people who are driving, that is an integral part of of Uber and Lyft's business. And so it's going to be very, very difficult for the gig economy to classify its workers as independent contractors. Now, in response to this, the Ubers and Lyfts and DoorDashes of the world are saying they don't expect a massive transition or reclassification of workers from independent contractor to employee. But let's wait and see what happens when litigation starts.
Well, I mean, this is right on us. What'd you say, starting in March?
March 11th, the new rule takes effect.
I mean, so if you're Uber and Lyft and any other employer that might be subject to the changes that are called out here, that's not a lot of time. Like for Uber to say, okay, well, we're going to hire everyone that's driving for us. I mean, I just don't even see how they would be able to pull that off by March 11th and be ready to take that burden in-house. They wouldn't have the ability to do so. Maybe they would need to hire an independent contractor,
Perhaps
to
like
help them
a
with that.
consulting
That's
company.
right.
So keep in mind, state laws still apply here, and there are a few states, California, our friends right across the river over in Illinois, and then New Jersey and Massachusetts are among the states that apply the stringent ABC test. The federal government did not go as far as the ABC test. A worker is considered an employee under the ABC test unless the hiring entity, so the burden is on the hiring entity to establish three elements, which are that the worker is free from the control and direction of the hirer in connection with the performance of the work, both under the contract for the performance of such work and in fact. The worker performs work that is outside the usual course of the hiring entity's business. So that's where most independent contractors are not going to qualify as independent contractors. They'll be employees. And then the worker's customarily engaged in an independently established trade, occupation, or business of the same nature as the work performed for the hiring entity. So again, California, Illinois, New Jersey, and Massachusetts, they apply that much more stringent ABC test. State law still applies here. So people are going to have to look at federal and state law when assessing potential risk of using independent contractors.
Right. And so I'll just remind everyone, you have a couple resources to help you in this space when you're going through this analysis, and everyone should pause, take a moment, and just look at the workforce. There are some hidden spots when we think about independent contractors. But as you're going through this and you're like, okay, I'm not quite sure. It's a little bit new to us. There's some new ways of thinking about the impact. Obviously, you have Ogletree. They're there to help you, and they would guide you through that. You have the AIM. We would be here to do that. You can contact our hotline and resource center and get all the tools and conversation you might need for that, as well as Ogletree is going to be there to help in this spot. We don't want anyone to get caught off guard. I think that's the big thing. Once you do the analysis, and if you're in a gray area, then you can choose which type of risk you want to take. But until then, do that at least actively, not unconsciously.
I agree, Phil, and that's one of the primary issues that employers should be looking at right now. Is they really should be focused on conducting audits of their if they are part of the gig economy, or if they have freelancers or independent contractors. They really should assess the risk of using those folks, determine if any classification changes are necessary, updating policies and procedures, training managers, and of course working with counsel and other independent contractors such as AIM to help assess this risk.
Absolutely. And one thing I know that many of our listeners today take advantage of, what we would think of as temporary workforces. And they have done a good job over the years, and they'll have supervisors of the temporary company at the employer and doing those things to try and help. Do you see any major shift or change to that industry as it relates to this new rule?
Yeah, I think that again, I'm glad to see that the U.S. Department of Labor stopped short of adopting the ABC test, because I do think that would have had bigger impact on the temporary staffing agencies. But I do think we will start to see some challenges to the temporary staffing agency model, and in particular, I think that you're going to see a lot more in the area of joint employer. Yeah. And it's going to be harder to, separate that out, and for an employer or a company to point at the workers and say, those are not my workers, those are the workers of the temporary staffing company. I think we are really going to see a lot more on joint employer, and this is a piece of that.
Yeah, and I think the next thing that will be under scrutiny here will be then your benefit package. That will be that's to me the next hidden gem for let's just say the opposing party that's pushing on this. The labor organizations that are pushing for these changes. Because you can still today say, well, if you're only working 10, 15 hours, you're not eligible for these benefits and these types of things. That's going to create that's the roots of what they're trying to get to, isn't it? And that's going to be the next battle, is my prediction. We'll start hearing about that, I would guess, very soon.
Well, that's right, Phil. I mean, the whole goal, the policy goal, agree with it or not, the policy goal of making people employees versus independent contractors have several aspects to it. And the first is that when workers are deemed independent contractors, they're not covered by a lot of the labor laws that are in effect in the U.S. and in the various states. And so if they become employees, they become covered by those labor laws, labor and employment laws. The next, of course, is that if they're employees, they're going to be entitled to benefits. They're also entitled to minimum wage and overtime pay. And so that's really what this is going after. This is why the labor unions and other special interest groups want people classified as employees versus independent contractors.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, Burt, I think you got something else in store for us, maybe related to the Pump Act.
Well, I do. Let me just say one other thing. It's not just the gig economy. I do want to mention one other thing, in that a lot of folks in the trucking industry and the construction industry are also really worried about this new change. So although a lot of the noise we've heard around this it focuses on like Uber, DoorDash, the gig economy, construction, trucking, even hotel operators have really voiced more pressing concerns about the resulting potential for litigation and uncertainty here related to this new rule, because in those industries, you've got in the healthcare industry, education, food service, information technology, janitorial work, a lot of that is done on an independent contractor basis. And so it's not just going to be the gig economy here. And I do think this is going to be a significant issue as we move through 2024. And as you mentioned, Phil, it is an election year. And, the Biden administration has spent 3+ years, or almost 3 years now, undoing what the Trump administration did. And who knows what's in store for us this November. But, things could continue to get pushed in this direction, or we might see a new administration undoing what the Biden administration has been doing for the last 3 years. So it's all up in the air right now.
Thank you once again for tuning in to This Week at Work. If you enjoy the show, please share it with your colleagues. Forward our invites. Share the link, aimea.org/thisweekatwork, or follow or subscribe wherever you get your news and entertainment, like LinkedIn, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We're everywhere you are. And you can be part of the show. Send your questions and comments anytime to info@thisweek.work. We'll see you next week, 7:30 a.m. Central Time, when we discuss what's happening this week at work.